World Economic Forum chief warns of 3 possible bubbles in global economy. Trump blames Democrats for government shutdown and urges immediate action to end it. And Russia's Putin orders roadmap for Russian rare earths extraction. You're watching Q News and this is our economic bulletin. I'm Hani Saif and we start off with the global news as the World Economic Forum President, Borj Brende, has warned that global markets could face 3 potential bubbles in cryptocurrencies, artificial intelligence and debt amid sharp declines in tech stocks. He noted that government debt levels are the highest since 1945 and cautioned that AI-driven productivity gains could create Rust Belt effects in major cities as white-collar jobs become more easily replaced. Brend added that while technological change can disrupt labor markets, history shows it ultimately boosts productivity, the key driver of long-term prosperity. In Europe, IFO Institute has reported that sentiment in Germany's Belgrade automotive sector improved considerably in October, although it remained clearly in negative territory. The Business Climate Index improved by 8.4 points to negative 12.9 points. Data also showed that the index measuring the sector's expectations leaped by 18.2 points to negative 3.9 in October, with companies citing a strong rise in demand as well as high capacity utilization in production. Export expectations also rose to 18 points in October and once again slightly exceeded the comparatively high level in the previous month of 16.7 points. The Status has reported that German industrial orders climbed more than expected in September, thanks to increases in demand for automobiles and electrical equipment. Orders in Europe's largest economy increased by 1.1% from the previous month on a seasonally and calendar-adjusted basis. Excluding big-ticket items, new orders were up 1.9% from the month before. Data also showed foreign orders were up 3.5%, while domestic orders went down 2.5%. Moving on to Asia, Chinese Premier Li Qiang has confirmed that the Chinese economy will continue to grow strongly in the coming years. He expected the gross domestic product to surpass 170 trillion yuan over the next 5 years. Qiang explained that China will work on expanding domestic demand and increasing internal consumption to become the main driver of growth. China will also continue opening its markets to global companies. He pointed out that achieving these goals will represent a new and significant contribution to global economic growth. The Ministry of Commerce has reported that China's services trade maintained steady growth in the first 3 quarters of this year, with the total imports and exports reaching nearly 5.94 trillion yuan, up 7.6% year-on-year. Services exports rose 14.4% to over 2.6 trillion yuan, while imports went up 2.8% to more than 3.33 trillion, narrowing the services trade deficit by 238.24 billion yuan on an annual basis. Knowledge-intensive services grew steadily, with total trade up 6.4% to about 2.27 trillion yuan. Exports jumped 9.2% to nearly 1.32 trillion, and imports rose 2.8% to 952.83 billion, expanding the surplus of 85.73 billion yuan. The Bank of Japan members have indicated that conditions are aligning for an interest rate hike, with 2 members calling for an immediate increase. Several members also suggested waiting for a little more hard data. The board weighed the risks of delaying action against concerns over slowing growth and persistent inflation driven by high food costs. However, Governor Kazuo Yoeda gave the strongest hint yet that a rate hike could come as early as December. U.S. President Donald Trump has blamed Democrats for what he called the longest government shutdown in American history, urging immediate action to end it. He warned that no further bills would pass until shutdown was resolved. Trump emphasized the strength of the U.S. economy, but said the closure had severely affected elections, the aviation sector, and stock markets. He also criticized America's voting system as disastrous, suggesting the need for major reforms while highlighting record stock markets gains over 9 months. Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani has won the New York City mayoral election. Mamdani has called for higher taxes on corporations and the wealthy to fund progressive initiatives such as rent freezes, free childcare, and free city buses. Moreover, Mamdani told his supporters that he was aware the president was watching and urged him to pay closer attention to his campaign and turn the volume up.
Of this news that former Governor Cuomo has been conspiring with President Trump. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants. We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks. We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know, just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
For his part, U.S. President Donald Trump has reacted strongly to Mamdani's comments, as he stated on Truth Social, and so it begins. as the president earlier threatened to cut federal funds from New York City if Mamdani was elected. He noted that it would be difficult to allocate money to a city run by a communist. Such funds would only be wasted.
Together, New York.
For more on this, we're joined from Washington, D.C. by the national security analyst, Mr. John Rosamando. Mr. Rosamando, welcome to the Qnews Economic Bulletin. How feasible is Mamdani's plan to raise taxes on corporations and the wealthy to fund the rent freezes, free childcare, free city buses, without harming New York City's economic growth?
Absolutely impossible. I mean, the one thing about pie-in-the-sky socialists like Mr. Mamdani is they forget that billionaires and millionaires have the ability to go places like Florida, places like Tennessee, and elsewhere and take their business with them. So the only thing that Mamdani is going to do is shrivel out the tax base and blow a hole in the budget. And before long, you'll see New York turn into another Detroit, or revert to the way it was in the 1970s, where you had burned out buildings because the city couldn't pay its bills.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about President Trump's threat then to cut federal funding to New York City, especially amid the ongoing government shutdown? Will he go through with it? What legal authority does the president have to enforce such cuts, and how might the shutdown affect it?
Well, the president has wide latitude under statute and Supreme Court precedent to withhold funding. I mean, the federal government routinely withholds federal highway dollars from states that don't engage in policies they want. Like back in the 80s, the Reagan administration used it to impose seatbelt laws.
Mm-hmm. How could the federal government shutdown complicate or delay the allocation of federal funds to New York City? What impact would this have on Mamdani's ability to enact his progressive agenda then?
Well, Mamdani won't be inaugurated until next year. So right now, everything in D.C. has grown to a halt. Benefits for food assistance has come to a halt. Federal workers are without pay, and pretty much everything's grown to a halt.
Mm-hmm. Well, then it won't be up until a year, but in light of President Trump's criticism of the voting system and the call for reforms, what challenges and opportunity exists for New York City's electoral process under Mamdani's leadership, at least?
Well, Mamdani will probably try to liberalize voting laws to allow more people. One of the things that some of the left-wing cities have tried to experiment with is allowing 16-year-old children to vote. So, I mean, that's one of the things that they'll try. But New York is overwhelmingly Democrat, with the exception of Staten Island.
Mm-hmm. Well, considering the economic contributions of the immigrant communities to New York, how might Mamdani's policies address the balance between supporting these communities and managing fiscal challenges in the city?
Well, the number one thing is going to make life harder for the minority and immigrant cab drivers. You'll see an increase in crime because Mamdani probably be more relaxed in terms of enforcing, broken windows laws and things like that. That brought safety and prosperity in the Giuliani and in the Bloomberg years.
Mm-hmm. From Washington, D.C., that was the national security analyst, Mr. John Rosamando. Mr. Rosamando, thank you very much, sir, for your insights. And now we move on to the latest developments in the trade war.
Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully take office of President of the United States.
Capitol open, the Americans and reciprocity.
Mexico, Canada,
Greenland. Also, and I don't.
China's cabinet has announced that Beijing will suspend retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports, including duties on farm goods, but imports of U.S. soybeans still face a 13% tariff. The Tariff Commission of the Cabinet will scrap duties of up to 15% imposed on some U.S. agricultural goods from November 10th, while keeping levies of 10%. Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó has revealed that Hungary will discuss the creation of a major economic and energy cooperation package during a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Earlier, Orbán has hoped to convince Trump that Hungary should be exempted from U.S. sanctions on Russian oil.
Amely előkészítésnek egy fontos állomása volt. Szeretettel köszöntöm Önöket, akik élőben másik fontos eleme lesz a tárgyalások napirendjének egy nagy gazdasági és energia együttműködési csomag létrehozása, amelynek előkészítésén az elmúlt hetekben és hónapokban sokat dolgoztunk, amely előkészítésnek egy fontos
The sterling pound stabilized on Wednesday as traders looked to fine-tune positioning ahead of Thursday's important Bank of England meeting, but remained at close to a 7-month low against the dollar and its weakest in well over 2 years against the euro. The sterling was up last 0.2% on the dollar at $1.3049. Though it hit $1.3011 in early Asia trade, its lowest since mid-April. Similarly, the euro was down 0.1% at 88.07 pence after hitting 88.3 pence in Asian trade, its highest since May 2023. Global markets showed mixed performance across all indices, with European markets showing broad gains. In Europe, Germany's DAX went up 0.37%, France's CAC 40 edged up 0.12%, and Britain's FTSE 100 jumped 0.67%. In the United States, the S&P 500 was up 0.28%, the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.5%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 0.02%. Across Asia, Japan's Nikkei 225 plunged 2.5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng shrank 0.07%, while China's Shanghai Composite hiked 0.23%. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered the Russian cabinet to draw up by December 1st a roadmap for the extraction of rare earth minerals. Putin also ordered the cabinet to take measures to develop transport links at Russia's borders with China and North Korea. He noted that the locations should include 2 existing railway bridges linking Russia and China and a planned new bridge to North Korea, which he said must be commissioned in 2026. And for more on this, we're joined from Moscow by the former advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Mr. Sergei Markov. Mr. Markov, welcome to the Q News Economic Bulletin. What are the main goals of Putin's directive for a rare earth minerals extraction roadmap? How does it aim to boost Russia's position in the global rare earth market?
First of all, you may know that Russia biggest country by territory, and rare materials they distributed through the whole planet, and so those countries who has more territory theoretically has more rare materials. These rare materials are extremely important for the different high-tech sectors, especially for batteries, for the rocket missiles, and for electronics, and so on, for the chips. That's why it's became very important. And now, a lot of countries has different problematic relations about rare materials. For example, United States mostly buy rare materials from China, and after United States start its economic war against Chinese economy, China say, "Oh look, why we should allow Americans to buy our rare materials? Probably we will use it for our domestic purposes." That's why Russia needs to have some kind of strategy for the for sure supplying by rare materials. First of all, it's exploiting own rare materials on Russian territories, but also it's more cooperation with friendly countries with whom we can do it. It's include, of course, China and North Korea. Potentially, it's include also India, Iran, Turkey, and some other countries. Yes. So it's a Russian response to the increasing of chaos and struggle on the global market of rare earth materials.
Yes. Well, they are friendly countries to Russia, China, and North Korea, but given how significant the Russia's rare earth minerals reserve compared to global competitors like China, China is a competitor in that sense, but what challenges does Russia face in increasing its production then and processing capabilities?
We should take into account that the number of rare materials, it's quite big. There are different rare materials. It's not just like gas and oil, which is in fact gas on oil, and this is energy, compact energy. Rare materials has very different and they use for very different sectors of high-tech economy, and they have very different situation in any of these areas. But what is important that complicated modern economy needed to have dozens of different rare materials. And each of them, for the consuming for sure these rare materials, each of them should have had special plan how to do it. And of course, diplomatic relationship is basic for them. If a country doesn't have, but if country has such rare materials, it's also not just easy just to take it, because these rare materials not easy to find, not easy to take from the earth. That's why very broad scale program of geology investigations should happen. It's exactly what Russia want to do. These two directions. First of all, to find more rare materials in Russian land, and secondly, if we have some problems, to have diplomatic relations with country which has a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. What is the significance of the role of the planned transport infrastructure projects with China and North Korea play in Russia's strategy to enhance its rare earths export potential? President Putin stated that he wants to include 2 bridges that are linking Russia to China and wants a new bridge to be commissioned by 2026 that would link it to North Korea.
North Korean economy have been more or less closed during many decades, and building the bridge from Russia to the North Korea, which has the border, can help to involve North Korean economy to the global economy through Russia. For Russia, it's can have a positive role, and we understand that now, because both Russia and North Korea under the strong attack of Western countries, these countries has to cooperate with each other and to develop transportation network, transportation capacity. It's important basic for the economic growth of economic cooperation. Yes, to China. China open to the global economy. China has great economy, but China also understands very well that United States will continue and will develop more and more economic and technological war against China. That's why China needs to have more cooperation with Russia. Russia also understands this. I think these bridges will be constructed all together by Russian and Chinese side. I would say even from, as I understand, Chinese already made their own participation in such project more quickly than Russia. China just has more money, and Russia more, step going not so forward, more slowly. That's why Putin's decision should speed up this Russian participation in the Russian-Chinese joint transportation projects.
Mm-hmm. From Moscow, that was Mr. Sergei Markov, the former advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Markov, thank you very much, sir, for your insights. And back to our news, the oil prices eased on Wednesday as investors digested weaker economic data from top oil importers, but an expected drop in U.S. fuel inventories limited further losses. Brent crude futures were down 0.6% at $64.07 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was 0.7% lower at $60.13. And gold prices rose over 1% on Wednesday, lifted by investors avoiding risky assets despite stronger than expected private payrolls data in the U.S. Spot gold was up 1.2% at $3,977.94 an ounce. U.S. gold futures for December delivery rose 0.7% to $3,989.8 an ounce. Elsewhere, spot silver gained 2.2% to $48.14 an ounce. Platinum rose 1% to $1,551.4, and palladium climbed 2% at $1,419. That brings us to the end of our economic news bulletin, but here's what we've been covering. World Economic Forum chief warns of 3 possible bubbles in global economy. Trump blames Democrats for government shutdown and urges immediate action to end it. And Russia's Putin orders roadmap for Russian rare earths extraction. This concludes our economic news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Q News EGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching.